In fiction, we often look up to our main character to embody traits like heroism, perseverance, kind heartedness, and the like. These traits help us empathize or strive towards these characters as ideals and help form a connection between the audience and the character. Now, what exactly is it that makes Subaru special? Well, that's just it. He isn't. Subaru is simply human. Nothing more, nothing less. He has no important special talents or defining features. Simply put, Subaru is not perfect. Now let's put Subaru's imperfection aside and talk about his character development throughout ReZero. It's important to note that development does not necessarily mean a character has to become more competent or powerful over the course of a show. In reality, it simply means the character noticeably changes over the course of the show due to various events and characters. And Subaru most definitely goes through a roller coaster of insane events which now define him. From this point on, I will be discussing spoilers, so if you have not seen ReZero, I would recommend stopping the video. Whether you believe it a realistic depiction or not, Subaru clearly suffers from psychological trauma. Subaru started to slowly change every time he died because of the traumatic experiences he's forced to undergo. His attitude and way of thinking dramatically change, and a good example of this is when he was confronted by Rem about whether he is from the witch's cult. Before this, Subaru was trying his best to appeal to everyone in the mansion and earn their trust, only for it to be meaningless. When he tried to plead innocent, he refers to the history and previous experiences he has with Rem, only those experiences technically did not happen since everything was reset. Rem responds that she has no memory of those events, and as a result he's killed while he's crying, only to repeat the processes over and over again. Now let's return to the point about Subaru not being perfect and being a flawed main character. In the first half of the show, as a result of his achievements, which can be largely attributed to luck, he grows arrogant and develops a why-not complex. He essentially feels as though he is the most important person and that everything revolves around him. That causes him to assume two big things. One, that everything will always work out without much trouble because he is too important and he's essentially the main character. And two, he is needed by Emilia and dubs himself a knight. This change created an obsession which led him to his downfall when he was confronted by Julius, a real knight, and questioned the proclamation of his knight status. Subaru's arrogance led him to make a complete fool of himself, insulting both Emilia and the title of actual knights. The world Subaru was in has its own laws and customs, and at that moment, he completely disregarded those things. When looking at it contextually, it makes sense for Subaru to be misinformed, as he came from another world and was thrown into the deep end. However, he still did not put in the effort to educate himself to properly help Emilia, and because of his arrogance, he simply led himself into believing that he's the most important person and that everything will work out. Subaru has absolutely no skill in combat whatsoever. All he has are cheap tricks and his own selfishness. As a result, he was defeated easily and humiliated because of his arrogance. Subaru is then later called out on his selfishness by Emilia, and he yells at her, practically telling her that the only reason she is alive is because of him and that without him she would be unable to do anything, thus causing a rift between him and Emilia. Subaru's true feelings and intentions are laid out for all to witness, thus proving his development of this white knight complex and the fact that he is not perfect. Subaru has flaws, just like every human does, and Subaru is left to his own pitiful state only to wallow in his own self-pity. As the story progresses, Subaru is constantly used and mistreated by those he is trying to make allies with, and is given a massive reality check every time he attempts to change events. And this constant failure causes him to suffer mental torture at the hands of Betelgeuse and witness the deaths of people he cares about. In culmination of all these events and emotions, Subaru finally snaps and succumbs to his mental state. He gives up understanding that he is a powerless person and that he is not strong or special and is incapable of anything. And even when he does try a different approach and negotiates with the candidates of the throne, we learn how desperate he's become. He can't talk specifics about the situation to the people whose help he's requesting, and he hopes that people would simply get him, but they understandably don't, and they end up humiliating him, doubting him, and this just builds towards his frustration and emotionally scars him. One of the aspects I love about him is that he constantly runs away. It's very human to not want to face their actions, and it's even more understandable for him because he's tired of seeing people die. He's physically and emotionally exhausted. Subaru constantly makes bad decisions, and that's one of the best aspects for him as a main character, because it makes him more human and flawed, rather than an ideal. He never learns strong abilities and remains weak, which really grounds him and forces him to come to terms with his own self and force a change. He felt important in this world. He felt like he had been given a purpose. He placed his identity in being the hero that could save everyone, but he was never quite that. And he had been denying the fact up to this point. He's a flawed person who constantly makes mistakes, but as a result of his experiences and the desire to help people, he slowly overcomes all these obstacles to become a better person. Subaru is not likable in terms of our standards for how a main character should act, but his imperfections, flaws, and realism is what makes him a great character.